Well, Thomas, thank you so much for joining me. Straight after your recital, it's very impressive that you could still have so much energy to talk to me.
Thank you for inviting me.
No, absolute pleasure. And it was a pleasure to hear you play as well. It's fantastic. I was wondering if you could just tell us a bit about the recital program that you just played, the Bach and the Ravel. I was wondering if you could just speak a little bit about it, if that's okay.
Yeah, sure. So I chose to do these two pieces because, well, I'm playing them quite a lot at the moment in recitals. Obviously, having had the pandemic and everything, it's been quite rare to actually have live performances. So now that we're getting more of them, I've been enjoying playing recitals a lot recently, and these are two of the pieces that I'm using a lot. So the Bach, the G major toccata, is such an uplifting and joyous way to start the program, and it's also good just to warm up if you're not familiar with the piano or anything like that. It's just a great piece to start with. And then the Ravel, I absolutely love the Ravel. It's the Miroirs suite, just so much color and just amazing piano writing. It's just truly amazing. So yeah.
Which one is more your sort of forte? Is it Baroque music or romantic, late modern?
I've never felt particularly strong at any one style, really. I just enjoy the challenges that they all have to offer. So,
I mean, how did you feel during the pandemic when you couldn't perform? What was going through your mind during this, or the year that just went by?
It was hard. Performing, I mean, the thing is, I would play piano regardless of whether people come and listen to me or not. But having said that, performing is such a joy to be able to share music with other people, and the atmosphere and the occasion that involves is something that I really, really missed. And so I did do a couple of online performances. It's just not the same though. You just don't get that atmosphere or anything like that. But it was what it was, and we made do. And it actually gave me time to perhaps work on some bigger things that I'd been meaning to work on for quite a while, more fundamental things within my playing style. So yeah, it was useful, and it's been a good time to reflect and grow as a person and as an artist. So
I was wondering if you could give us some insight as to what you're working, those fundamental things you just mentioned.
I mean, lots of things. I did a lot of work on sound production, just general technical things. Also, I thought a lot about the way I interpret music. I guess being alone for so much time, it allows you to reflect on yourself even more so. And that was quite useful in learning about myself and how I approach a piece of music, and what elements of that can I do better, and what am I good at, what am I not so good at, and just constantly trying to learn more about myself. So yeah.
Can you give us one example of what you learned about yourself?
I think it's difficult to give one. They're all kind of intertwined, but
well, give as many as you feel you need.
I think that period was, as an extreme introvert, as I would describe myself, that period, on surface level seemed like it would be great for me. Actually, I hated it. I hated lockdown so much. And I guess the biggest thing I learned is that everything in moderation is good. And so in terms of practice, having so much time to practice, but not spending it all practicing, and having so much time away from other people, actually, I struggled with that as well. So yeah, learning about moderating everything in life was quite a good lesson.
I mean, I talk about moderating. When you were doing the BBC Young Musician 2020, which you won the keyboard category, congratulations.
Thank you.
It's a huge achievement. At that time, correct me if I'm wrong, you were still at school. You were still doing your, what was it, GCSEs? And,
yeah.
I mean, can you speak about balance between those two, school life and your musical career?
Yeah, I'm really bad at it in one sentence. Piano is the thing that's always come first and will always come first. I'm doing A levels now, and nothing really has changed in that regard. I often end up just cramming in schoolwork whenever I can, often asking for extensions or just forgetting about the homework, which is not, I wouldn't recommend it, but it seems necessary to achieve what I need to achieve in terms of piano stuff. So luckily my teachers are usually very understanding, but that doesn't, it's usually very, very draining, and I have to make sure to take care of myself physically and mentally, because it's a lot to deal with, but it's enjoyable and I like being busy. So
what are you doing for A-levels? What courses are you doing?
I am doing maths, music and physics.
Fantastic. Why maths and physics along with music?
I mean, you'd probably like me to tell you that I do them because I have a real passion for them, but actually I just chose them because they're the ones I find the easiest and they take the least time away from piano practice.
Right.
So, yeah.
I see. Would you say you are naturally good with numbers and abstraction?
I mean, good is relative, but certainly much better than I am with words. Yeah.
I see. And you're still going to Junior Road Academy every Saturday. And you're studying with Eleanor Hodgkinson.
Yes.
Can you describe your relationship with her?
Yeah, so I started learning with her in 2016, in the September of 2016, when I started at Academy. And we worked a lot kind of when I started on getting a really good, solid framework of technique, so I could kind of go forward and access harder repertoire from then. And she's been such an important, if not the most important person in my development as a pianist in recent years, because her approach is always one of care and genuine concern for me and everything I'm doing. Yet she's always, inspiring me to keep pushing myself, and she always believes in me, which is having someone like that all the time even when I don't believe in myself, and she's there. So it's incredibly valuable to have someone like that.
I can relate, actually. I mean, I studied with James Kirby at the Royal Welsh College of Music, and he's always been the person in my corner. He was always the person that always knew what to say.
Yes.
To pick me back up.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure about you. I'm sure you would say something about it as well. You'll share something. But my experience was James wasn't just a music teacher. He was someone who brought a lot of insight from life and related it back to music.
Yeah.
So in a way, I learnt about life through music. And it was my lens for everything else. I was wondering if you had anything to relate to.
Yeah, definitely. As growing up, so obviously Eleanor started teaching me when I was 12, and I'm just turned 18 now. So she's kind of been with me through such pivotal years of my life, and I've definitely grown and developed almost to the point where if I look back at myself when I was 12, it's unrecognizable and it's very, very embarrassing. But yeah, everything she's taught me is, as well as the surface level stuff about how to make my playing sound good. There's been so much in terms of, on so many different levels. So there's the basic playing level, then there's the mental aspect of how you approach playing, and the ordeal in a way of going through concerts and competitions. Not so much concerts, but competitions can be challenging. And she's taught me so much about all of those things, and in a way, all of that is so applicable to life in general. Just the way that we as pianists and musicians have to approach everything we do it's not easy, and it teaches us a lot of valuable skills, and that's what she's been able to teach me. So.
Exactly, yeah. And I think one of those valuable skills that can be transferred is self-reflection, I think, and self-reflection and improvement upon that reflection.
Yeah.
As pianists, I think we have to be really, really self-critical about the sound we're making.
Yeah.
And be also observant as to where we're having technical difficulties and trying to find solutions. Problem solving.
Yes, definitely.
Problem solving. Yes. How would you say? How do you approach solutions? How do you approach challenges to your technique?
I mean, technique is something I've always felt like the musical side of my playing comes naturally. The technical side never has come naturally. So I've had a lot of technical challenges and so far been able to overcome them.
Good.
And I think the main thing really is just perhaps staying calm and being methodical about things and not making it too personal either, because it's so easy when you play badly or you make mistakes. It's so easy to look at yourself and say, oh, you're such a bad pianist, such a bad person for doing that. How could you? Actually, no, it has nothing to do with you as a person, and realizing that is so important. And then you're able to just take this step back and think, okay, that's fine. I made a mistake there. And then you can look logically at what happened and you can work forward from that point. That's something that's so crucial. And it took me a long time to learn that the hard way. So, yeah.
Yes, you're absolutely right. Emotions can cloud our judgments and our steps forward. That brings me back to sort of your studying of maths and physics. I think that also requires the mental approach you just mentioned, the methodical approach.
Yeah, logic and rationality.
Yes,
definitely.
Yes. Where sort of how do you see logic and its place in music?
That's a big question.
If I can narrow it down, maybe through sort of musical works, not performance, but in musical works.
I mean, it's funny, we have composers that they're often deemed as very logical composers and those that aren't. So people will always say that Bach is mechanical and logical, and I see what they're saying. But at the end of the day, I think music is music, and certainly music that has a big impact on me is music that comes from a deeper place than just surface level of what chord goes with what notes. And there's if you taught music and taught people to play music and approach music by following a set of rules and logic, it works, and to an extent they'll do great. But there comes a point when actually the real magic of it comes when you just let go of all of that and just follow your instinct. And that's truly the joy of music, I think, for me, is that point.
So musicality comes from your instinct.
Certainly that's my experience of it.
Right.
I know there are some people who will approach a piece very, very logically, and say, I want to achieve this kind of sound and this mood here. And I do too. But there's a point where, certainly in live performance as well, that you've just got to invest yourself in it. And ultimately it's a reflection of you, because the point that the music you're playing is so unique is because you're playing it and not anyone else. So you've just got to let yourself come through.
Yes.
At all costs.
Yes. Do you think musicality is something that could be developed, or is it something that has to be within you when you're born?
It depends, obviously, how you define musicality.
How would you define it?
I would define
personal.
it as, I guess, having a way of understanding and translating music into whatever you're doing, whether that's playing it, listening to it, even just having that kind of that way of understanding and knowing really and feeling it. That's, I think, what it comes down to is feeling the music and actually it's more than just sounds and rules, and actually it's something deeper than that. So yeah.
And possibly how the audience to whom you're playing receives it. Would that
Definitely.
be part of the musicality? If you can play something and you can move someone by it, would that also be part of your definition too?
Yeah, I mean, that's really the best case scenario in a way, is when you get told by an audience member that you've moved them. That's, you've done something really, really valuable there. But definitely, I think we can define musicality as having that understanding of everything that goes beyond the notes on the paper and the rules that we're taught, and having that kind of deeper human instinctive understanding, I guess.
That insight between the bar lines, within the bar lines.
Yeah.
Yes. I was wondering, there's how should I put this? Because you're doing maths and physics and you're doing music, apart from this methodical approach to both, to music and to maths and physics, are there any other similarities between these two subjects, between, let's say, music and maths?
For sure. I mean, the whole of the laws of physics kind of define everything, how music works. So absolutely, I can't say that when I'm playing I'm thinking about the sound waves I'm creating as such, but certainly it's interesting to think about the kind of innate understanding that we have to develop. You could sit down with a pen and paper and a calculator and work out the exact velocity you need to attack this note with to get a certain sound. But the point is, as pianists, we just have to do it and know what that feels like before we do it, and then do it, and it's got to come out. And so there is a lot of understanding, I guess, of those kind of logical, and the fact that everything kind of boils down to this fundamental laws of physics, but we never think about them. Well, I don't anyway, but of course they're there.
Yes. Do you have much intuition in maths and physics as you do in piano playing, would you say?
I'm not really sure. I certainly say that music is the thing that by far and away comes most naturally to me, and nothing else comes close. But there is, I do get on well with numbers in general. Memory wise, I like numbers much more than words. And yeah, it doesn't come as intuitively, I guess. It doesn't feel as innate within me, but I enjoy it and I get on well enough with it.
That's good. Well, I'm very envious. So. Maths wasn't the best for me. There's something that I wanted to touch back on, which was the notion of musicality and communicating musical ideas to an audience, and the audience reacting positively to it. And I want to bring that question back to you. Whose playing are you moved by?
So many pianists. There are so many. I can just reliving so many examples in my head now.
Go ahead.
So one of my favorite pianists is Vladimir Horowitz. Just absolutely incredible. The range of color and the tone that he gets out of the instrument is just unrivaled. And there are so many times I've been listening to his playing and just it's those moments that you physically feel it, your throat tightens or your stomach clenches and you're just like, oh, it's so good. And it just makes you feel something just in a way that for me words don't, never. Nothing does in the way that the music does, and his playing is always so communicative in that sense. Other pianists, I guess, Martha Argerich I have huge admiration for her. And also a lot of younger pianists as well. I recently remember from the Chopin competition in 2015, two pianists, Seongjin Cho, obviously, who won it, and Kate Leo, both of their playing incredibly moving. I'm playing the Chopin Third Sonata at the moment as well in recitals, and Kate Leo's version of that is actually one of the versions that I look up to so much, because there was a moment in the third movement, the slow movement, I was listening to it and just such an amazing, beautiful corner. And it wasn't a very particularly prominent thing. It was just so subtle, but just made me just sit there and cry. It was amazing, the power of the way she played it. So, yeah.
I mean, I do agree that all those pianists you mentioned are and still very special. Especially Song Cho when he won. I mean, there's something about his way of phrasing each melody, each section, and there was something. I'm not sure if logic is the right word. I'm sure he was very logical with his musical performance. There wasn't anything that really stuck out that was too jarring in any way. Everything felt extremely seamless. Would you agree?
Yeah, when he plays, there's this just unfazable, if that's even a word, element of just sophistication and charm, but also honesty. You really get the uniqueness, but it's still very tasteful and very charming.
Yes, those are good descriptions. Yeah, tasteful and charming, and elegance.
Definit's
and elegance,
qualities that Chopin really demands as well. So
yes, exactly. I mean, what other? Let's take Horowitz for example, and you mentioned his tone. Can you speak about his tone? What do you see in his playing that really, really resonates?
I think it's just the nuance and the subtlety and the control that he has with the sound he's making. Every note just comes out of the piano as if it's just it's so fresh and vibrant, but so pure in terms of the tone, and the way he sings a melody is just unparalleled. And the other thing I love about his playing is the way he never seemed to need to conform to anything. So he would play how he felt he wanted to play it. And there was something so amazing about listening to a Horowitz recording when you've heard 20 other pianists play it almost the same, and then you listen to a Horowitz recording and just blows them out the water with this amazing interpretation of it that just even if it's something that wouldn't be described in a piano lesson as incredibly tasteful, is just so Horowitz and so passionate and so present in that moment that it's just that's just such an amazing feeling from his playing. Yeah,
I do agree with how his playing, all the tones and the colors and the contrast between the notes. But I'm guessing you have seen his Music Varian recital.
Yes.
And he played Mozart K333. And I think it was the last movement. Every note was like a pearl.
Yes. Yeah.
Every note. Forte piano, mezzo piano.
Yeah.
Even notes in succession. Each note was different. And I just think that this is special.
Yeah, such a special pianist.
Yes. I just want to try to segue into competitions and your BBC experience. Was this your first competition experience, BBC Young Musician?
No, I've done plenty of competitions before that. I think it was probably the most most mainstream, I guess, like widely recognized in that sense. But no, I'd done music festivals and other competitions in mostly in the UK, just doing them, and they're all, to be honest, not too dissimilar from one another. Actually, I think the thing that made BBC stand out the most for me was the atmosphere, because it was so nice. And I walked into this huge competition expecting it to be like other competitions, and where there is so often this atmosphere of competitiveness and hostility. And it's sad that music comes to that, but unfortunately it's the atmosphere of so many of these big competitions. And you walked into BBC and everyone was so friendly, every other competitor, and I've stayed friends with so many of the other competitors, and it's just, there was something so nice about the whole atmosphere. It just felt like a celebration rather than an actual competition. So it was great.
Yes. That's I can't remember who wrote it. I think it was Murray McLachlan who wrote about the Leeds competition, and he said that in his article, he said it didn't feel like a competition but rather a festival where musicians come together and celebrate.
Yeah.
That's probably, would you say that's similar?
Yeah.
A festival.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think as well, we were all as the competitors, we were approaching it. I know from the few that I've spoken to about it, we were all approaching it in a way that we were very conscious of the fact that it was a hugely pressurized situation. You know, we're 16, 15-year-olds performing on national television live with, you know, no editing, nothing, and you're being judged on television in front of the nation. It's terrifying when you think about it like that. But we all approached it in quite a similar way of being very, very logical, and the psychology that we approached it with, certainly for me, in terms of like visualization and mental preparation, was hugely important. And I think in that way, we all felt like we were there with each other as opposed to there against each other, because it was quite a really big experience for people like me, so young and never having done anything like that. So yeah, it was very special and very enjoyable because of that. So
yes.
Yeah.
Is your preparation for competitions different from recitals, do you think?
Not really.
Right.
I do think about this, but in competitions, the thing is that I don't want to approach something in a way that's going to make me competitive, because I can be quite competitive away from the piano. I hate losing. And I don't want to approach music in that way, because that should never be what music's about. But for that reason alone, I just approach any competition as a concert, as a performance. And I don't think about the competitive aspect at all. If they like me, then great. And if they don't, who cares? You know, no one dies. Everyone goes home, and the world, you live to see another day, and the world goes on. So I think you just play honestly with, you know, who you are, and then it's not really down to you what happens after that. You do your best, and that's all you can do. So approaching it with competitiveness and hostility is never an approach I've tried to take.
And I'm glad you mentioned mental practice, because I think that's such a huge thing that people need to be aware of, and something that people should do more often.
Definitely.
This is speaking from my own personal experience, but honestly speaking, I don't think I've ever done any mental practice up until when I went to university. And when I went to university, conservatoire, it was a new thing for me.
Yeah.
People mental practice? I didn't know about this.
Yeah.
Was mental practice something you always did, or was it introduced to you during your junior conservatoire days? Yeah,
I certainly, you know, when I first started piano, I wouldn't do 20 minutes at the keyboard and sit down for another 20 minutes and visualize my middle Cs. I wouldn't do that. But as time went on, I think starting in fairly recent years, maybe the past 5 years or so, it's become increasingly important. I guess as going into situations where the pressure is higher and the consequences are higher, even though I don't think about them, but you know, they are there, and the prospect of making a fool of yourself in front of someone quite important is very much there. So it's very important to have a good hold of yourself mentally, and mental practice is such a good way of doing that, in terms of the way you visualize yourself playing, because a good performance, if you can approach it in a good mental state, that's half the battle won already. If you can play it in a practice room, you can play it in a performance. So the technical aspect is never a problem. The problem is your mind sabotaging itself. Right. That's always the biggest issue in a performance. So learning how to deal with that inner critic that's constantly, rabbiting on whilst you're playing, saying, "Oh, you missed that note. You could have phrased that better," or that dynamic was terrible. And you have to learn to control all of that and just let it just go straight in one ear and out the other. Like it just doesn't matter in that moment. So, yeah.
If you had to give a ratio between mental practice and physical practice, what would that ratio be? About 6.
For me, I guess, I do quite a lot of physical practice, usually around 5 hours a day, and mental practice. The great thing about it is you can do it wherever. You don't have to be, sat in a room intensely focused on it. You just be eating dinner and visualizing stuff in your head. So I do that all throughout the day. In fact, I never really stop thinking about playing. But yeah, I'd say I must do at least an hour or two of that, just kind of thinking through things in my head, because I would never really let go of what I'm doing at the piano. So yeah.
Well, what do you think through? Do you think about where your fingers are in extreme detail, in high definition, if you will, or do you think about the pedaling, or what goes through your mind when you mentally practice?
And you can focus on different things in the same way that you can do that when you're physically practicing. There are some times where actually it's more valuable just to focus on the visualizing how it's going to feel when you're performing. So going back to BBC, before I walked on that stage, I'd already done it 100 times in my head, and I kind of knew what it would feel like. I'd been lucky enough to actually walk onto that stage once before I was at BBC, so I knew vaguely what the acoustic was like. And it was such an important thing, just knowing, not having so much unpredictability, and having that mental flow in order to, you've got the basics of what the floor feels like, and what the piano sounds like, and how the hall feels, and then that stuff's not going to change. So that gives you more confidence to go forward and be able to adapt to the other things that are more unpredictable, like if an audience member drops their car keys in the middle of your concert or something like that. So yeah.
I mean, so when you say you've done it 100 times, do you mean you visualize you performing pieces in all detail where your fingers are going 100 times? Is that what you're trying to say?
I mean, maybe not literally 100 times. I didn't count.
But
yeah,
several times.
Of course, yeah. I do often think about just, sit down and think through the piece and imagine playing it and being in that state where the physical, technical aspect isn't a challenge. It's not getting in the way, where you're just in your mind. Everything can go well. You have much less difficulty in playing everything exactly how you want it to be played in your head. So going through that and then realizing how that feels when you're doing that means you can then take that forward and translate it to actually doing it physically. So how it feels mentally, just then actually do it. And it makes things so much easier, even if you've got a slight technical challenge. That was one of the biggest lessons I was taught, actually, by a teacher who's in Finland now, Ravel Miroirs, a great pianist, amazing teacher. And he taught me, when you have a technical issue, instead of instantly going, "Oh, I must fix this," and just playing over and over again, actually stop playing and take a step back, stand up, walk away from the piano, and think about what you're doing. And actually, a lot of the time, you'll think, you'll do a body scan and you'll think, "Oh, something's not right in my shoulder there," or, "I'm not quite using the right arm movement at that place." And actually, just thinking through and then imagining how it will feel when you can do it, and what you need to do to make that happen, actually is much more valuable than just banging over and over again at the keyboard trying to find it. So yeah. So
piano playing is not just a physical activity.
Absolutely not. So mental.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In both senses of the word, mentally. Great. Yes. And I think, well, for the listeners out there, I think do more mental practice.
Absolutely.
Just a final question. You're 18 years old this year. If there's one thing that you could say to yourself in 10 years' time, or one thing that you hope for yourself in your career, what would it be? You can choose one, or you can do both. What you say to yourself, or what you hope for yourself. Your choice.
It's difficult to imagine saying something to myself, because obviously I'll be in a position then. I'll be much more experienced. I'll have been through a lot more in life, and so to try and give myself advice coming from a very inexperienced 18-year-old, it doesn't seem right.
Okay.
But I can definitely say what I hope for myself.
Yes.
I hope that I will always realize that things generally resolve themselves if you approach them in the right way. Any problems, this is what I've learned so far in life, is that any problems you have, if you approach them in a logical and rational manner, they're never as bad as they seem, and they always resolve. And so I hope I remember that, and I'm still able to take care of details, but not worry excessively, and live in the moment, and not take myself too seriously all the time, because it's so, especially in such a toxic career world as classical music at the moment, sadly, it's so easy to think of yourself, one small thing you did and say, oh, how could I have done that? And actually, really, things don't matter as much as they think they feel like they do in that moment. So I hope I will always realize that whatever happens is okay, and so long as I'm staying calm and just approaching it in the best way that I can, that I will remain happy in that way. Yeah.
Well, I hope I can review this in 10 years' time. We're doing an episode 10 years' time.
That would be great.
Review this. Well, Thomas, thank you so much.
Thank you.